welcome to Audio Biography, the podcast, where we talk about the music that changed our lives and yours. It's me, Richie, and it's him, Clint. What's up, Clint?
Hey, good afternoon, Rich. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, it's cold and snow. Well, it's not snow anymore, but there's still snow out there. A lot.
Did any kids in your area go to school this week?
They were out all week. Everyone.
You're kidding me. All week?
Yes, the whole week.
It's a couple of flakes.
We got about 7 inches at our house. All told.
Okay, never mind. That's a lot. That's a lot for East Tennessee.
And you know how normally, because you're from here, you know how normally it snows a lot and then within 2 days it's gone because it's 60 degrees? That did not happen this week.
Not happening.
It's like we're in Wisconsin where it snows and it's 10 degrees and the snow doesn't go anywhere. That's what we had this week, which I'm not used to. Maybe when I was a kid it was like that, but not recently.
Well, if we have any listeners from Wisconsin, which is slim to none, but if we did, they would tell us, Rich, no, you get on your snowmobile and that's how you get to school. Then you'd walk uphill both ways.
Yeah, you throw them in a sled and you hook it up to the snowmobile and everybody goes to school. Yeah, I've spent some time in Wisconsin with work, and so I know it's always, there's snow always on the ground no matter what. So when we go up there for work, if it's the wintertime, I expect it. It's just really weird because now I'm living it here in East Tennessee. So I'm over it, ready for it to be done.
Yeah, well, even my kids were out on Fridays, so.
Well, we don't, generally in the wintertime, we don't take our gazebo down on the deck, and because we don't have to worry about it. Well, it has completely collapsed from the snow, so I'm going to have to do something about that.
Oh, no.
We're probably going to build a really nice wooden one with a aluminum roof and stuff. So,
okay.
Gives me an excuse.
See, there's something positive to come out of something negative, isn't there?
And you always got to find that silver lining. So now today we're going to talk about 1974. It's a slim year in a way. It was a little bit harder for me than the first two, for sure.
Me too.
Definitely 1973. That was tough in a different way. There were so many to pick from and so many albums I love. But this one, I'm still excited about it because there's some stuff that me and you really, really love in this list. So, especially when we get to the top of the list, I'm expecting we're going to talk a lot.
Yes, and some surprises in this list.
And matter of fact, that's a good segue. We're going to start with a surprise because you get to go first today. And so,
oh boy,
what is your number 5 pick?
Okay, and like I told you, this will probably be the only time they show up in a top 5 list for me. But my number 5 pick is the debut album from Kiss.
I am shocked. I mean, I already knew, but I'm still shocked. It's funny. I have lots of podcast friends, and a lot of them they started podcasts because of this band. Some of them have left them behind. Craig Smith. From Pods and Sods. What's up, Craig? I know you're not listening, so I'll just talk all the shit about you that I want. But then there are other friends that have podcasts that still love Kiss, and that's fine. But I'm going to shut up now and let you talk for a little bit about this record and why you picked it.
I went back and forth on my top 5. The top 3 have been set. And I won't get into that. There's lots of good conversation we can have about that. But my 4 and 5 made it into my list this week after really thinking about what I really love and what I keep going back to. So with this Kiss record, it's their debut album. It has, I don't think it did well commercially, but it was enough of an impact that it introduced the world to this band, and it got them off very solid footing. I think they, especially the thing I like about Kiss, their early stuff, is that they were a fantastic band, live performing band. I mean, that was their thing. They put on a show. And most of these songs on the first album, I actually prefer the version on Kiss, the Alive album from Kiss, which was a couple of years in 1975 or 76, I believe. But this album has my all-time favorite Kiss song, and Strutter. And let me tell you a little story about this song that involves my buddy Ima. Ima's not his real name, Brad. You may have heard us talk about him before. He's literally the closest person in the world to being a brother because I grew up right next door to him. We're born like a month apart, and we grew up together. Played video games, played basketball, played wiffle ball, discovered music together. He's just a lifelong friend. Me and Ima were really into Guitar Hero. When I was so a little bit brief thing of my history, real quick. I started college when I was like 20. Well, let's see. Actually, I tried going to college a couple times, dropped out. When it really clicked for me was about 22, 23, and I was still incredibly flawed and made things harder on myself. But after about 3 years of college, at that point, I was at Tennessee Tech. I took a co-op job with Eastman. So I took a year from break from school just to work. So I got to come back. I came back home, live with my friend Hoosh for a little bit, then moved back home to save money. And anyway, I remember me and Ima going to hang out with a fellow co-op one night, and we ended up playing Guitar Hero into the wee hours of the morning. I don't know. We just like you stand up, you're playing that game. It's kind of a workout almost, you really get into it. We were just revved up from it. It's so it's the only time I've ever done this. But me and I was like, man, and we played Strutter on the game. Strutter was on one of the Guitar Hero games, and we're like, oh man, I really want to hear that song on the way home. I actually called 1015 WQUT because they were taking requests. I actually got through because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, can you play Strutter by Kiss? And they're like, yes. And hung up the phone. And me and I was, you know how it goes. Like you're probably two or three in the queue. There's probably a couple other requests there, but I'll never forget the euphoric feeling me and I get. We just pulled out of the apartment complex there on John B. Dennis, and as soon as we got on, it came on the radio, and I was like, it's the radio.
And this was in the 2000s. You were doing terrestrial radio requests in the 2000s.
Yeah, so it's like 2006, maybe 2000, early 2007. I don't know. It's probably 2006, but anyway, well beyond when anybody should be doing that. It was just kind of a throwback. It would have made more sense if it was 1996, but no, it was like 2006. But he and I just got such a kick out of it. I don't even know if that's a good story, but it's a memory that I'll never forget.
No, I think it's a great story. That's what this is all about.
I mean,
is that your favorite Kiss song? You think
it is? Yes, but I think this album has one of your favorite Kiss songs, "Cold Gin."
It does. I love that song. I like the opening riff, and it's a great rock and roll song. And I'm not a huge Kiss fan. They'll never show up on my list either. So I'm glad that you picked them because they're pretty important. I know their importance in rock and roll. So at least they made it on here. Thanks, for doing that because they are important. I don't necessarily care for them at all. But yeah, no, Cold Gin, either it or Back in the New York Groove, which was on the Ace Frehley, when they did the 4 solo, like
yes,
each. I think that was on his.
Yeah,
that one's up there. But no, Cold Gin's just a good rock and roll song, and Ace wrote that one. Gene sang it, but Ace wrote it.
Paul Stanley sang Strutter. So a little bit of not comparing them to the Beatles, Rich, at all, but a little bit of the Beatles element where you had a couple different lead singers. So there's lots more rock bands like that. The only other thing about Kiss, real quick, I remember my dad telling me, my dad has a huge impact on me musically. He grew up in a very strict household and where rock and roll was really not permitted. He had the album and he literally had to sneak around so his dad didn't catch him because I think either in the song or another song on the album says the word damn in it. And that was taboo. That was, you're going straight to hell, son. And I just thought that was one of the funniest stories to me because none of us should ever be that extreme about anything. And B, it's just a word. Get over it. And I'm always going to remember that about Kiss, though. I don't know if my dad would ever say he listens to Kiss today, but when he was a kid, it was like one of his secret things he loved. And, you know, always going to have that association with the band. So, and I'm not going to say that's a negative connotation. I just think it's just a comment to make. So, anyway, Rich,
Yeah, I
that's my
think
number five.
yeah, I think we all had those albums that we hid from our parents for whatever reason. That may show up later in this series. Only thing I'll mention, I think Deuce, I think that's like a big one for Kiss hardcore fans. I think that's one of the ones that they love, maybe. I
Yes,
think.
that's on the album.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the big ones. I was just reading, and apparently it for this one to get to 500,000 copies sold, that wasn't until 1977. So yeah, it was initially not really taken to at all.
And I bet that has a lot to do with the Alive album, honestly.
I'm sure it does. And the only Kiss albums I own are all the live ones because those are the ones for me that's the ones to have.
Yeah.
Alive, Alive 2, and Alive 3. I think there's three of them.
Yes.
I've got
Yeah.
all three. And I think those are the ones to have. And I would say that every time one of those came out, it boosted everything else because they're really good. The live stuff it's great. Not going to show up on my list, even though they're good, because those years there's too many other good things. But we'll mention it now because we
Well, they
probably
snuck in my top five this year, but probably never again.
we did, man. That's amazing. Okay, my turn. For my number five, I picked Queen 2. And I was like you, I did a little bit of shuffling this week on these because this, first of all, this record has my favorite, mm, maybe my favorite Queen song. I don't want to be too hot takey right now, but um,
Hot take tub time machine.
Hot Take Time Machine. That needs to be a segment on every single one of our podcasts, by the way. Seven Seas of Rye is possibly my favorite song by them. This is not their best album, but this is the first album where they started to sound like Queen with the multi layers and the all the big vocals and this is it's a rock and roll album, but more than that, you've heard of Camelot rock?
Yes, I have.
This is kind of like the first Camelot rock that I can point back to. I guess some of Led Zeppelin could be considered that in a way, if you think about it, like the subject matter. But this one, it's for sure. And this is kind of a proggy sort of record too. It's a concept album and it's got some prog rock in it. But again, it's a good listen from start to finish. So that's why I moved it up. And as I said, Seven Seas of Rye, it's at least top two or three. I just love that song. It's one of those songs. It makes me feel good. I don't even know if it's supposed to, but it does.
No, I could see that because it's got, the little piano intro, and then Brian made,
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty epic. And the whole record is epic. So
there's a song called Ogre Battle on the album, Rich.
we've got a white queen and we've got a black queen. We got ogres. We're selling the seas of rye. I mean, come on.
It's got it all, baby.
And like again, this is when Queen started to sound like Queen. And it's pretty rocking too. If you're listening all the way through and not just rocking, it's got it all. It's got the prog, it's got a little bit of metal in there. It's a little glammy, you know. And the thing that ties it all together, it's basically hard rock. It's not definitely not soft rock. It's not anything. It doesn't sound like anything else from 1974, except for maybe the other one that, yeah. But even it's different than this one. But I don't know. Queen is one of those bands that I'm a huge fan of that I don't talk about much.
Same.
I think that's probably true for a lot of people because they do get lost in the shuffle.
So I love Queen also, but I feel some shame here because I feel like this album ought to be something that I like or in my list. And it's an album I haven't spent much time at all on Rich. I'll just be honest with you.
But that's so easy to fix.
Oh, I know.
That's why we're here.
I'm going to fix that.
I've become a Stooges and Iggy fan because of last week. I mean, that's why we're here.
I mean, isn't that incredible?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's really I don't have a ton to say about this. There aren't hits to point to. There aren't it's just a cohesive rock and roll Camelot rock fest for me. And it also has my favorite song on it. Oh, to that end, a few years ago, I think it was during COVID, Eric Miller from Pods and Sods was doing six pack. He was doing these episodes six pack of Queen. He'd have himself and two other people. We'd all pick two each, and we'd talk about those six songs. This was one of my Queen songs. Don't ask me what the other one was. That makes this one my favorite, right? Because I can't even remember. I don't even remember what my other one was.
Oh, that's great. And actually, listen to that episode just to stay in the Queen lane for just a moment. I remember somebody choosing It's Late from News of the World. I think that's the album it's on. And that's a song I missed. And I went back and listened to it. And I'm like, oh my God, this song's incredible.
I'm trying to remember who I was, because I was on a few of those six packs. I think maybe Chris McGovern. I can't remember who was on there with us. Eric is a massive Queen and Freddie Mercury fan, so he could have picked that. I just don't remember. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. I don't even know what my other pick was.
And it doesn't matter, but I remember it's funny that when you said that, the six pack episode, I remember that was my takeaway is, okay, I went and listened to that song and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I missed this. So that's why music's awesome, and talking about music just turns you on to things you never even may have tried to listen to before. So,
and a fun little quick aside, I think I did three of those. I did Queen, Dokken, and Paula Abdul. No, I did four, and Aaliyah.
Pick a lane, Rich. You're all over the place.
Dude, I am the highway that runs through Atlanta, dude. I'm in all the lanes.
Oh my God.
I am going from the first lane all the way to that 11th one. And I'm stuck. Like you always get in Atlanta. Like I can't get off. I can't get off the highway.
It doesn't matter which lane you choose, you're gonna be stuck in it.
Yeah, I was all over the place with those six pack episodes, but that's kind of, I mean, I'm going to be all over the place with these years of our lives kind of deal. So anyway, I'm going to throw it back to you then for your fourth.
Oh man. Okay, number 4 for me. And this is one that wasn't in the top 5 a week or so ago, but it was on my list. And the more I thought about it, and the more I considered how much I love the music without judgment, I put it at number 4. And that's Second Helping by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Skynyrd.
No judgment from me, buddy. I could never hear Sweet Home Alabama again and be just fine and dandy. But this album is so much more than that. So go ahead.
And what's amazing in the 1973 episode, I think I like the first album, Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, even better. But this album is very strong. About every song on it is pretty damn good, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm like you, Rich. I could go the rest of my life and never hear Sweet Home Alabama again because it is one of the most overplayed songs in music, period. But it's got so many other songs. Actually, one of my favorite songs. So
it has my favorite Lynyrd Skynyrd song on it, by the way. So here we are. We're in another record. My favorite song of a band is on the record.
Is it The Needle and the Spoon?
It surely is.
Oh, that's a great song. That's so great. That is such a great song.
Yeah. That's it. That's my favorite. Actually, my second favorite is on this record too, by the way.
So I'm just going to tell you, I don't know why I love it so much. I love swamp music. I have no idea why I love it, but I love it.
It's a good song. I agree. Bow to Curtis Love. That's my second favorite Skynyrd.
Okay, so those two songs. So my introduction to Skynyrd is my Uncle Mark, he had it was like a green box set, two or three CDs in it. Yeah, all I can thinking about is like a dark, almost a dark Kelly green box. And what I would do a lot of times is just go through his CDs and listen to stuff. That's how I got introduced to Led Zeppelin, so many other bands, Guns N' Roses. So I bought, after hearing some Lynyrd Skynyrd, I bought the iconic Greatest Hits album, Skynyrd's Inyards. And
That's so funny.
I
That's
know it's so funny,
so
right?
great.
They just lean into it.
They do.
They certainly into it. But the two songs we just talked about, "Needle in the Spoon" and "Ballad Curslow," were not on that album,
Hmm.
not on that Greatest Hits compilation. This album, I mean, "Sweet Home Alabama,"
Don't ask me no
"Don't
questions.
Ask Me No Questions," "Working for MCA." I like that song. So here's a fun memory for me. So I don't know if you remember, this is riding the bus days in high school. Okay. Before before I got my own car. So I was 15 or 16. Because I got my car. Dad got me a real lemon of a car the summer after I turned 16. It lasted me for a little bit. I was thankful to have it, but it was a piecer. Anyway, before then, I remember bus rides, always having my Walkman. I mean, I didn't go, and it wasn't even like a Sony. It was like a knockoff, whatever brand Walkman I had, but it worked. So I'd always be listening to tapes on the bus ride. Sometimes our bus driver would be, he'd try to be cool and say, "Hey, is anybody have any tapes you want to play on the bus?" And somebody's like, "Hey, Clint, you got some music?" And it was like an older kid. And I'm like, yeah, I've got this. And I just made like a mixtape.
So you're like, do I really want to expose myself here?
I was a little self-conscious about it.
I would have been at that.
Yeah, because it's like you got upperclassmen like asking you to play music, and you're like, I don't want to be judged
I
by
mean, that's the power of music. You're bearing your soul when you let people know what music you're listening to.
exactly. Now, and so I remember one of the tapes I played had "Call Me the Breeze" on it, which is the last song on this album, and it goes on forever, but it's a great song. And I remember getting some approval from the other older, mostly older dudes on the bus.
That's a great J.J. Cale song, by the way. I love J.J. Cale. I don't know how much you're into J.J. Cale, but
Wasn't he in Velvet Underground? Or
no,
is that John Cale?
no,
That's John Cale.
J.J. Cale's. Yeah, if
He
you
was a
don't like,
songwriter that worked with Eric Clapton.
yes, singer songwriter, not a great voice, but wrote some amazing songs, and that's one of his. Yeah, Call Me the Breeze. Leonard Skinner's version to me is more fun.
Oh yeah, and you can tell they're having fun. You know what? That's the thing. When you listen to their music, I think they were probably heavily drugged, but despite that, they were having fun with it. They were having fun playing music and playing together. So that kind of comes through in the music. They just kind of let it all hang out. There's not a lot of albums I could go back to, but I mean, I feel 100% confident in my choice of having this in my top five. These are songs I've listened to a lot, and there was probably a period in my time in my life where I was like, I'm too cool for Skinner, or I want to leave behind the Southern version of me. But that's who I am. It's part of who I am.
It is. That's what this is about. That's exactly what we do is about. And so, yeah, lean into it, man. Enjoy it.
Well, I did at number four.
Okay, so now we are at my number four, right?
Correct.
And it's a two in a row. We're going Sheer Heart Attack by Queen, and I think that's your number three.
That is correct, Rich.
So, we get two Queen albums this year. This one is much more known and probably critically acclaimed than Queen 2. It shows up on lots of all-time album lists and stuff like that. Because you've got Brighton Rock. If you know Queen, you know that one. Great Brian May written song. Killer Queen. God, we all know that one.
Absolutely.
That's something that they probably did live until they didn't do live anymore with Freddie, and who knows what they do now. I don't keep up with it anymore. Also, Stone Cold Crazy, we know that one, and of course, a lot of people know that one because Metallica covered it.
Yes.
But again, this is just evolution of Queen this year. So this one came second, of course. It was later in the year. It's very much a rock and roll album too. I would say not so much like Queen 2. There's more pop sensibilities in this one, I would say. Like a song like Killer Queen, right?
Yeah.
It's very radio friendly. It's accessible to people who don't necessarily listen to heavy rock and roll music. And that was their first single on this record. Stone Cold Crazy was not a single, which to me, I know that song, and you look back at these songs that that all the fans know, and you think, why was that not a single? But that's just another case where fans create their own singles. They create their own hits, like the things that they want to listen to forever.
Yeah. This album also has Now I'm Here on it.
Which was a single, and that's a good song too.
Yeah.
It's not Killer Queen, but it's a really good song.
No,
Uh,
I like that one a lot.
yeah, what are your thoughts here? Because it's year number 3, so you look at it just a tad bit higher than me.
No, I agree with everything you've said so far. It's the prequel to my favorite Queen album, which we'll talk about that in the next episode. What you love about Queen, what I love about Queen, is kind of the same thing I touched on about Kiss earlier. But you had only, well, it's not the same degree as what Kiss did. You like on Tenement Funster, which is just a fun name for a song. But you're like reminded that Roger Taylor could sing, and he's a pretty good singer.
Really good singer.
And he would be like the lead singer in just about any other band, but he just happens to be the drummer for Queen. But that was one thing I took away, just like, man, he's a great singer.
Yeah, I was just looking. So, yeah, Killer Queen actually did really well, even in the United States. It looks like it made it to number 12. I would have had no idea about that. It
Okay,
didn't make it to number 1 in England. It only got to number 2.
that's surprising. I
Like
wonder.
that would have been a number 1 over there. But
Yeah. So I have a funny story about Killer Queen. I don't know if I've talked about this person. The first roommate I really had, Ben King. My dad had a condo in Ridgefields, kind of on the outskirts of Ridgefields. And when he moved to South Carolina, I moved into it, and Ben moved in as my roommate. And this is my charter days, Rich. I still remember trying to dial in, play when we were playing in our online Madden League. That's one of my memories from living in that condo.
and I was over there at least once, maybe twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I had Queen's Greatest Hits, and Ben, he borrowed my CD just for Killer Queen. Now, I'm gonna call him out here. He'll never hear this. I'm pretty sure he still has my CD. I don't think because it's missing.
That's awesome.
Now, the only reason I have it again is because my kids love Queen, and my daughter requested having a Queen CD one year for Christmas, and so she has like the 3 CD greatest hits. So I have that song. I have that, CD again because of that. But Ben King, if you're listening, just send that back to me.
That's so funny.
Or keep it. You know what? You just keep it at this point.
Oh, that's fantastic. We all have those CDs out there
I mean, I probably got a few CDs that I need to return to people.
I'm sure that I do. I'm sure of it. It's just what happened.
Yeah. The thing that I love about Queen is that was the band that I love that my kids love first. They love Queen before they love the Beatles, actually. It's because my wife loves Queen, and it was a common bond we have. So that's kind of just a band that I share with my family, is that we're all big Queen fans, and I love that.
It's too bad that we weren't able to go ahead and get Robbie on, because 74 is his birth year, and he's the biggest Queen fan that I know. So we'll get him on another year where there's something really good Queen. You know, there's some more good Queen records
No,
coming.
there's lots of good Queen to come.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Yeah. So yeah, that was my 4, your 3. So now we get to just jump to my 3.
Yeah, that's fine. Go.
So we're back to Roxy Music, Country Life. This is last year I did not have the record from last year on my list because it was a crazy year where there were so many things to pick from. So Stranded was not there, but Stranded and Country Life kind of go together because these two records, after Country Life, they do start to change a little bit. And I know we'll get to talk about that later, but they do start to change a bit and move a little bit away from this art rock thing that they've got going on right now, which is, I read that and I'm like, that's exactly what this stuff is. It's art rock. Country Life is much like the debut record in that the lead off on side A is just an amazing way to start a record. The thrill of it all. So good. They're still kind of in the same formula though. Everything is a little bit all over the place from song to song. They've got the one that sounds kind of like their version of country. It's sort of it's the same deal really. Like they kind of had a formula on these first 3 albums. This is better than their debut album to me, just top to bottom. The reason I picked this is because after I discovered them, we've talked about that and started going through their catalog. It's a record that I can get in the car, start it, and listen until it's done. Or put the record on a turntable and listen until it's done. It's just that good. It's so funny though. I mean, Brian Ferry's such a character, still doing the crazy stuff with his vocals, still, every now and then the vibrato goes into the goat bleat almost. Uh, that said, we were in the car yesterday, Sherry and I, running around doing some errands, and we were just listening to Sirius XM, and it was the 80 station, and Belinda Carlisle came on. It was the song. The song was "I Get Weak," and
Yes.
her vibrato almost goes into that goat bleat thing. It's really heavy and almost off-putting, but it's fine because it's her. So immediately I'm like, I think of Brian Ferry when I hear that. And so while we're out running around, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play Country Live for Sherry. She doesn't know this music at all. We're going to ride around in the car all day and listen to Roxy music. And she thought it was fine. And we started up and the thrill of it all is on. And I'm like, when do you think this was recorded? You know nothing about this music. What do you like? Give me an era. Give me a year. She's like, I don't know. It kind of makes me think of like the like 83 or 84. And I'm like, it's 10 years older than that. And I just thought that was just like a cool little anecdote to share, that she would think that this was from the 80s and not 1974. It showed that they were way ahead of their time, which is why I love them so much. They don't sound like anything else from the 70s.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like me, I'm coming to the party late because of this list. The format that we're doing, we're showing each other, I'm able to see Rich's picks when I make my picks. And so I'm like, there's all this Roxy music. So I went in and listened to them. But I remember the first time I was listening to Country Life with the first song, The Thrill of It All. And seriously, if you just go listen to that song, and you don't have to listen to anything else, but you'll probably be tempted to listen to more once you listen to that song. I just texted Rich, holy shit, this is a banger.
Oh yeah. That song it's, as my dad would say, it's the tits. Speaking of which, let's talk about the record cover, the album cover.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine being a 16-year-old kid in the UK and you're definitely buying this record based on the cover.
They don't really care what's in the music. Or so
that would have been gravy for a 16-year-old kid. The music would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, this totally fits. And one day we're going to do an entire episode about Brian Ferry. But this totally fits with him. You want to talk about a dude that, what a character, and the women. And I mean, him and Mick Jagger fought over the same women. And oh, yeah, no, there was all kinds of, there's lots of tea to be spilled, lots of stories. You know, a dude that's like, obviously, when you listen to him singing, he's full of himself because he doesn't think that he can do anything wrong. And I love that. I love it. Like he sings, especially in the 70s, he cleans it up for the 80s stuff. Obviously, he cleans it up for the radio, and he doesn't even hardly sound like the same singer sometimes. But no, he's like devil may care when it comes to his vocals. And I love that because it's free. It's raw,
Yeah.
real,
Well, that's
and it's
and
egotistical.
well, yeah, but that you want artists doing that. I don't want anybody feeling restrained and not being who they are and putting out this music. And just like any artist that evolves over time, I'm okay if their voice changes or they sound a little different.
You
You
kind of
know,
want that too, especially like in that 10-year window, right?
hmm
At this discussion, we're not going to get into it because it'll be a huge rabbit trail, but you know, most bands have that 10-year window where they do their best work.
Yes.
And then after that, you kind of feel like you don't care as much about what they're doing because at that point they kind of start to change because everything else is changing and they want you to keep listening. And so it's harder to hang on. Anyway, that's the short of it. We could have a whole episode on that.
No, I think that's a good general statement.
But we've had
And
that conversation. And so, yeah, so there's like that 10-year window where they're doing exactly what they want to do, don't care what, you know, the record industry's telling me. I don't care what A&R says. This is what I'm doing. And the great ones get their stuff past all that. The ones that don't, they're not great in that we don't go back to them. We never heard of them. The ones
right.
the ones that say this is me, like it or leave it. And that's kind of how I feel about this Roxy Music stuff is I can't imagine them selling this stuff to the record companies. Like what were they saying to get this? And but they did, and they kept doing it.
That's a really good point. So obviously they were so confident and they were good salesmen for themselves.
Well, we can fast forward to one of your favorite bands. Again, this is sort of rabbit trail, but it's to nail this point. Like somehow, some way, Billy Corgan was able to get record execs to put his records out with that voice.
Yeah.
You know, and I just use that because that's one of your favorite bands. And he obviously at some point said, "This is me. Take it or leave it."
I mean, the same could be said for Rush.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's I love that. That was a really good way to talk about Brian Ferry and Roxy Music to kind of continue the conversation from 2 episodes ago. So, yeah, just check this out, guys. Check the music out. Listen, you don't have to like all of it. If you'll listen to the lead off, if you listen to the thrill of it all, you're going to enjoy that. Some of this stuff on here you're not going to like as much. I just know you won't, and that's cool. I get it. But no, yeah, take a look at least that one song. All right, so that's my number 3. So we're up to your number 2, which is my number 1.
Which is your number one. So let's go right into it. Pretzel Logic by Steely Dan.
Wholly different from something like Roxy Music.
Yeah, let's just take a 180. Isn't music incredible? And it could be like it could go in so many different directions and so many different levels of production quality. But you want to talk about the elite in production quality, you begin and end the conversation with Steely Dan. Because I don't think I've ever heard anything by any other artist.
Maybe the Eagles, but
Oh, that's a really good point.
but I no, you're right.
Or
It's
Jackson Brown. Steely Dan is just so incredible. This album is so incredible. So it's got my all-time favorite Steely Dan song, Ricky, Don't Lose My Number, or yeah, and or is it Don't Lose That Number or Lose My Number?
that number, but that's
That
okay.
number. Yeah.
That number could be my number.
It could be. I think I mixed that and Phil Collins, Don't
I,
Lose My Number.
I think you did. That was Billy.
Billy.
That wasn't Ricky.
You know what? I'm not talking about Billy right now.
But
I'm
then
talking about Ricky.
Skid Row did Ricky was he? Oh, never mind. Now we're just
Now you just took it to Skid
off,
Row.
off the rails. Turn down the main. Turn down the main, Skid Row. Now we're in Dane Cook.
Oh my God. All
Gotta
right.
love music.
I know, right? You just launching so many different rabbit trails there. Pretzel Logic. You just mentioned putting an album on from start to finish. This is it. Especially side one. Good gosh. Ricky, Don't Lose That Number, Night by Night. Any major dude will tell you it's such a wonderful song.
It's not my favorite Dan song, but maybe the
Oh, I like it.
second or third. What I love is you start with Ricky, Don't Lose That Number, and you've got that boom, 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 that whole jazzy thing to start the record. So smooth. I've heard people say they don't like Donald Fagen's voice. That I can't understand. I can't understand that. I think he has the coolest voice almost ever. And then you go from that to Night by Night, which is a straight up funk jam. It's totally funky. Like, and then you go to Any Major Dude and just guitar, little acoustic guitar, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a nonsense lyrics. It's kind of like, and here's what's funny. I'm going to say it. It reminds me of a Paul McCartney thing because of the little acoustic intro that doesn't take you exactly where you think it's going to go in the end, and nonsense lyrics. Like the chorus is total nonsense, but it works. And like I say, like Deacon Blues is probably my favorite Dan song. This is maybe second. I don't know. And then I mean, let's not shortchange this. Then you go Barrytown. Then you go to the instrumental East St. Louis Toodaloo. Doesn't sound like anything that came before it.
No.
Then you flip it and you're at Parker's Band, which is a total tribute to Charlie Parker, of jazz fame. And then Through with the Buzz, which is just like this little tiny interlude of a thing. Again, and this is a short record too.
Yeah.
For short. It's like 34 minutes, which is funny. Like our top two are the same. The other one is not 34 minutes.
No.
Then we get to the title track, Pretzel Logic, which is it's I would say it's just straight blues, but it's not. It's Steely Dan doing straight blues.
Yes. Great song.
And I am not a big blues fan. I'll just say it. I'm not a big fan of the blues because it can all run together. It's like bluegrass. It's like so many other genres where there's a fast version and a slow version. But when Steely Dan does it, it sounds completely different.
Absolutely.
But it's just blues. It's just a blues song. And then, With a Gun, Charlie Freak, Monkey in Your Soul, some short little songs to end it out. It's just a perfect little 35 minutes of listening. And it's just 35 minutes. So listen, y'all, if you are listening to me right now, just go to Spotify, pull this record up. You're only going to have to invest 35 minutes. You will not be disappointed.
And tell me you wouldn't buy a pretzel off the guy on the album cover.
That guy makes the best pretzels ever.
Right? And roasted chestnuts.
There are no better pretzels to be found in the world. I'm sure of that.
Especially at those prices, Rich. 15 cents for a hot pretzel.
That's funny. It's a cool record. It's a cool record sleeve. It just is.
Yeah, actually, inside the sleeve, I never noticed this before until I opened it. It's a nod to Rubber Soul. Did you notice that?
Oh yes. No. Oh, I was going to mention that too. Oh, you beat me to it. It is.
And what I mean by that is the picture is kind of stretched, elongated.
Yes.
In this when you open this album sleeve. So
absolutely. Yep. I love that too. I love it. No, I mean I can gush and gush and gush on this one. I already have. So you guys know that I like this record. Ricky, Don't Lose That Number. That's another one of those, like from from their debut album. It's a song that was always there in the 70s when I was a kid, like totally ubiquitous. It sounds like my childhood, along with, Do It Again and Reeling in the Years. Those three songs, they were always on the radio in the 70s, even into the 80s. I mean, they were on the radio constantly. So, no, big one for me. That's why it was my number one. So, do you have any more on that? Because please, I feel like I threw up all over the microphone on this one and left you out. So, let's just move on. It's my second and your first. It's the only one we have left.
And my number one pick is The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis. I don't even know where to start. I love this album so much. So it's a double album. That will probably turn off most casual listeners. I get it. This is not an album, I've loved Genesis for a very long time, but this is not an album that I really grew to appreciate. You know what? I can tell you when I started to appreciate it, and it's thanks to Rich. And I don't think I've ever told you this. Back in the days, early days of sharing music with each other, where, you could give a mixtape or make a mix CD. Well, Rich did me one better. I think he gave me like an MP3 CD and it had every Genesis album on it. Or actually, I don't even know if I asked for that. Or that was kind of a throwaway thing because we were talking about Genesis and you just happened to throw it on there. I don't know how it got on there. I just remember this vividly, but it had Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I had never listened to it before. I had heard, and the only song that I had heard from it was the Carpet Crawlers, because on a Greatest Hits CD Genesis did, they brought Peter Gabriel back in and they kind of remixed a version. And I knew the title track, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, from a live album they did, The Way We Walk Volume 2. The first song, it was really cool what they did. They led the live album off with a medley of songs with Dance on Volcano, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Firth the Fifth, The Musical Box. So that was my early introduction to early Genesis that I had no knowledge of before. So I get introduced to that, but it wasn't until later. Sometimes when you hear something, you don't latch onto it right away. It takes you some time, and you just get, I'm going to listen to this in its entirety.
Especially a record of this depth, like you're at multiple listens. It has to be.
One song flows right into the other, the entire album. It is a concept album. I'm going to loosely describe this. It's about a character named Rael who is Puerto Rican, and it's basically him coming of age, sexually, emotionally, becoming a man sort of thing. And the one song that Phil Collins sings on the album that you'll talk about, it's pretty humorous, to be honest with you. And it kind of really leans into the coming of age part for this character. It is all over the place musically. There are some strange sounds on the album. And and this is pretty much why Peter Gabriel left the band, was because of this album, because they spent so much time and energy recording it. Then they went on this crazy 1 to 2 year touring schedule of this album where they played this album in its entirety, night after night after night. And I think it pretty much burned Peter Gabriel out. I don't think he had any more left to give to Genesis after that. And that's probably why he left the band. He wanted to do his own thing. But the album, to me, is pure greatness.
And I also think it caused anxiety just amongst the band too, right? Like, wasn't there some of that?
One thing I remember, I think I saw a documentary about when I bought the box set, they had some interviews about recording this album. And either Mike or Phil were talking about how they would pair off and mix the album. They'd mix it in teams, who like Peter and I don't know, Peter and Tony, or Peter and Mike were paired up, or Phil and Tony, or Phil and Mike were paired up. Steve Hackett was just off being great somewhere. I remember whoever came in after the other were like, oh my God, what were you thinking when you mixed this? And they just totally redid all the work that the previous team did the hours before that. And it was just really interesting. I mean, you could see the band, like, they're trying to forge new territory and they're stretching themselves in many different directions. And what is produced is greatness. So some of the highlights of the album for me, the title track, but I love In the Cage. And they played that song live for many, many years. Back in NYC is incredible. But to me, I will do this quite often too, Rich. The last three songs on the album, it starts with Riding the Scree, which is just mostly instrumental. And it's just the weirdest sounds you ever heard coming out of guitars and synthesizers. I can't even describe it. It is it just sounds like some creature that's flying through the air. I don't know. It's just wild to hear.
It's Banks and Rutherford.
Yeah.
Those two are magic at creating sounds that you've not heard before. We're going to talk about that a lot as we go through this because we're going to have Genesis albums all over the place.
We're not going to apologize for it because they're great and that's fine.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to let you rest your voice and just jump in for a second because
yes, please.
you got to be getting tired, and I know you got a bunch more to say, so I'm just going to let you have a rest.
Okay.
I do want to point out this. It's the last record with Gabriel. You already said that, but the reason I point that out is because I know a lot of people, and for a long time I didn't quite understand it because I didn't quite understand this music that they had in the 70s with Gabriel. A lot of people feel like Genesis is better when Peter Gabriel was there. I get that now. I totally get that. But let's move on from that and say, especially with a record like this, with Banks and Rutherford and their musicianship, their writing, their arranging, all the stuff that they were doing as far as music, amazing. And they carry it through from the beginning all the way until We Can't Dance, even the corny Genesis that some people think is corny, and there's some of it I do think is corny. Like I Can't Dance is the corniest song in the world. But listen to that whole record. Every single one of their records still has this stuff in it, and it's because of those two guys. Now, I'll say this, and I say it fully tongue in cheek. Waffle House has Side Meats, and Genesis has Steve Hackett. I totally warned Clint before. Totally that I was going to make a good joke. He didn't know it was going to be a Steve Hackett joke because we have a running Steve Hackett joke. But yeah, now if you go to Waffle House and you order your meal, one of the things on the side of the menu is like side meats, and it's like all this good stuff like bacon and all that. Steve Hackett's kind of their side meat.
That is so funny.
Like I said, I say that totally tongue in cheek because I don't know that Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks are completely appreciated like they should be.
Well said.
A lot of why Lamb Lies Down on Broadway sounds like Genesis self-titled from 83. If you listen to the whole record, I mean, you go to that record, and we'll talk about it when we get to 1983. It's going to be on both of our lists. We know the hits on that record, but they're carrying this stuff like from the Lamb to that era. So one more thing, and then I'm going to throw it back to Clint because I know he's got more good stuff. I love, he mentioned it before, but I love Counting Out Time, which was one of the singles from this record. And one of the reasons I love it so much, well, Phil sings it, right? This is the one that does Phil sing this? Yeah. Phil sings it, but it's a Beatles song, y'all. It sounds like a Beatles song, and it makes sense because Phil Collins loves the Beatles. It's a huge influence. If you read his book, talks about them a lot, and he actually works with them later in life, into the 80s and whatnot, because he was everywhere. He was working with everybody. Just a good song. It's just a good song. Okay, I'm going to say this. So I was listening to it earlier today, and Counting Out Time came on, and I brought Sherry in, and I was like, what does this sound like? She goes, that sounds like Phil Collins. And I was like, no, beyond that. She's like, a Beatles song. So I don't know if she really picks up on it or if it's that every time I hear a song that sounds like a Beatles song, I go, Sherry, what does this sound like? I think that's probably what it is.
That's possible.
It's probably because I hear the Beatles everywhere. Me and Clint joked about it in text earlier today, but I can always find, you give me a record, and if there's a song on there that was totally inspired, I'm going to find it If it was inspired by them, I'm going to find it. And I just feel like that about that song.
Now, love it. Yes, you killed me with the side meats. That was well timed. Definitely agree with the nod to the Beatles. I don't have much more to say. It's if I once made a, I used to when I worked at Eastman, we used to have a whiteboard in the hallway, and we'd put music topics on it. And I told people to name their top five desert island albums. This would make my list actually. It would be an album that I would want to take with me to listen to. And it may seem like an odd choice, but that's how much I love it. It's just so complex and it's so weird, but I love it. And like I said, the way the album ends for me is such with a weird flourish that with riding the scree in the rapids and into it. Like people heard it, they would never think that's a Genesis song. With the wild guitar intro and the synthesizers with it, but it's
I'd
just
make guitar.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Thank you.
No, you're being serious, and I shouldn't do that. I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. But anyway,
You gave me the idea before we started this.
I know.
When you said side meats.
I know.
Side meats is going into the description. People will listen just to see what's this about side meats. They'll have to listen to the whole thing to get to here.
He really didn't make this up. If you go to a Waffle House, it's on the menu, people.
It's in bold, underlined, side meats. Oh, brother.
Oh, that's 1974.
Yeah. Yeah. That was fun, man. I've been looking forward to this all week. I knew that once you made your changes, it was even a little bit more exciting because I'm with you on like Skynyrd. We know those songs. You can't get away from them where we're from. And then, of course, I knew what our top two were. I knew that we were going to have some Queen in here. I knew I was going to get some Roxy music. So let's just take just a moment, some stuff that we had to leave out. I'll start with one, I will say, and it was actually at one point in my top five, but I had to drop it for Queen. But Up for the Downstroke by Parliament. It's early P Funk. I love funk music. I love Parliament. I was really into hip hop in the early 90s. They were sampling all of that stuff. That's how I even found out about it because a white boy in East Tennessee did not know who Parliament or Funkadelic or Parliament Funkadelic was growing up. I didn't know.
So I have to ask you something. How did you get into Parliament? I mean, who got you into them?
Honestly, really, it was in the early 90s with hip hop. They were like Dr. Dre, and I mean, everybody was East Coast, West Coast, you name it. But it was mostly like Dr. Dre and Ice Cube were sampling their songs. And of course, there's songs that we all know. I mean, you probably have heard "Get Up for the Downstroke." I mean, everybody get up. We've heard those, but we didn't know what it was. It was hip hop that got me to look back at what they were sampling, and so much of it was P Funk, which is Parliament. And man, I love funk music, and they did it as good. I mean, you've got George Clinton and Bootsy Collins. Enough said. Bootsy Collins, one of the best bass players to ever do it, especially in funk music and R&B. He was before he was Bootsy with the star sunglasses and the long hair, and he was. So that's really how. Like I never heard it growing up. I heard these beats and these things and these hip hop songs that I loved, and I was like, no, that sounds. And then I heard the name George Clinton, and he was like guesting on some of those, and so then I just started looking it all up, and I'm like, well, no wonder they use this for their songs. This shit's good. So that's kind of how. So that's the first one that I'll mention is Parliament. What do you got?
Well, so now you mentioned hip hop, and it's not. I mean, outside the Beastie Boys, Rich, I don't go very far into hip hop. There might be some songs here and there, So when we get to the late 80s and the early 90s, that'll be really fun for me because it'll be music that I don't know. And I'm going to seek to learn and understand, you know.
Yeah, our list will look a lot different then, and that's going to be cool. You got a
Yeah.
like
Well,
a honorable mention or
I got a
two?
couple I want to mention. Yeah, I got a couple honorable mentions. The first Rush album came out in 1974, but it doesn't have Neil Peart. It doesn't mean it's not a good album, but it's not one of my favorite Rush albums. It has Working Man, it has Finding My Way, both are great songs. What You're Doing. But yeah, I wanted to highlight some other music. Trust me, we're gonna talk plenty about Rush in the next few episodes or so. And on the Border by the Eagles and Bad Company. I mean, and Walls and Bridges by John. I mean, there's a lot mention. Diamond Dogs by David Bowie. I mean, there's good stuff out there, but there's not enough that stood out for me to make the top five.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically our honorable mentions are things that we appreciate, but it's not something we go continually seek out. That's sort of that's the mission here is the things that we're always looking to go back to, or even like I don't listen to a lot of Lynyrd Skynyrd, but it's ever present. I mean, there were two songs on that record, Second Helping, that my in my cover band we did. You know, Call Me the Breeze and the one that shall not be spoken of anymore, Sweet Home Alabama. But I did notice on your list that you had Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot. I love the song too. There's a lot of Gordon Lightfoot that I love, like, but Sundown, it's just a good.
Better take care of
Yeah, no, that song sounds like my childhood for sure. Diamond Dogs. I mean, that's a pretty like for mega Bowie fans. That's kind of a big one. It's
I mean, I
also
love Rebel Rebel.
the rest of it's kind of a tough listen, but yeah, it's still Bowie. Boss Skaggs, Slow Dancer, was that year. No big hits, but it's smooth Boss Skaggs, you know. I always like Boz. Rufus and Chaka Khan had a couple of records. That's a band that I like a lot that I don't talk about. Yeah, there was some other stuff. It wasn't as mega packed as 1973.
No, good point.
And even it's funny, it was easier to pick our five, but we still made changes at the last minute. So I don't know what that says. That's probably more about me and you than it is about the list of songs. It's if I had to guess, it's more about me and you thinking. And I think we're going to do this more. I think we get to some years and we change what we've originally put.
Yeah. And you think about it's just start thinking about the next episode. And this is how much music can change, right? This is how our opinions can fluctuate. You don't have to be dead set on. This is something that I've just embraced later in life, and moving away from where I grew up has a lot to do with this too. You can open yourself up to liking new things, and you don't have to like all the same things you used to. Some things that I'm gonna carry with me all the time, but sometimes you're like, I like this album more than I do now, more than I used to, and oh, I just now discovered this album. That's going in my top five because it's how much I love it. I mean, this is how it can. I mean, we're just trying to pick the top five for how it resonates with us. Does it have a history? How influential has it been on our musical taste? I think that's what I think about, and then the more I think about it, albums just kind of pop in my head. I'm like, that needs to be my top five. So I mean, that's kind of the story how I got to my top five this week.
That's a very good way to put it. That's that's absolutely perfect. All right. Well, that was 1974. I was only two. Clint was still -6. But we're going to move through them. We will have future guests. I think Josh is going to come back for 1978. We've exchanged some emails, and a couple other people, Robbie and another friend Dave, want to join at some point. Robbie will join probably anytime. He'll just be like, just tell me the year.
I'm thinking 1975 would be a fine time to have Robbie on the podcast.
It very well could be. I'm with you, man. We could probably throw Robbie in next week if he wants to. Okay, y'all. So yeah, watch out. Next time it'll be 1975. Y'all go ahead and start looking up these years and see what was happening that year and see if it matches up. I know some of you are listening enough that maybe you'll go and look ahead. So please do that. And keep listening, keep subscribing, keep downloading. We've had some comments recently on episodes. Keep doing that. We just want more and more of that. Really, we want to. It's a community thing that I want to do. I want this to be something that I'm sharing with others, and others are sharing back with me. That's what this is about. So, till next time, you know where to find us because you're here. Tell everybody else about us, and we'll see you then.